Good evening, and welcome to the 5th Aga Khan Public Lecture at the GSD. This annual event is intended to bring to the GSD's public platform a prominent designer practicing in the Muslim world who engages contemporary issues facing the built environment and who, through his or her work, opens up a dialogue that transcends the regional and the local. Past lecturers have included Zaha Hadid, Hantu Mertekin, Sahel Al-Hayari, and Vladimir Jurovic. I'm very pleased to present tonight's and this year's speaker, Anna Heringer. Anna was born in Germany and obtained her education in Linz in Austria. Her thesis project, a school for an NGO in Bangladesh, received the Archiprix Award. Anna has taught in several places, but now she is back to Linz, where she is a professor of architecture. Anna's practice has taken her also to South Africa, Mozambique, Bangladesh, and now Morocco. Her work has been exhibited all around the world, including here at the GSD, and now most recently at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. She has received several awards, including 2 Emerging Architect Award for Architecture from Architecture Review, and for her Handmade-school, which is up here on the screen, she received the Aga Khan Award in 2007. Tonight is actually a very special occasion because as we celebrate the work of a winner from the 10th cycle of the Aga Khan Award, the 11th cycle of the award is being handed out today in Doha, in Qatar. So it's a very special occasion. When the Aga Khan Awards were announced in 2007, the photograph of Anna Heringer's Handmade-school, this particular image, was the one that was most frequently used by the press to announce and to review the awards. The school became instantly iconic, perhaps because of the way it creatively rethought bamboo and mud as new construction materials, or because of the way it combined local fabrics and colors, or because of the way it engaged the local NGOs, but perhaps also because of the way the children were made so happy to go to school, which is not a very easy feat. Yet beyond this list of attributes that have in some ways become stereotypically characteristic of all that we want to see in the architecture that relates to social development, there was something edifying and unusually timeless about the project, and it spoke to something more transformative than appeasing about architecture. In refusing to abide to one tectonic, to one formal vocabulary, or for that matter, to one color, it was more opportunistic than gratifying. And above all, the outcome was contemporary, yet unusually timeless. In that sense, and more than any other project in the recent memory of the Aga Khan Award, the school and Anna's work have marked a turn of the award towards the unexpected and towards a younger generation of architects working in the Global South, but using the Global South to establish new parameters for globalist practice. For all of the above, but above all for her sense of beauty, please welcome Anna Heringer.
Thank you very much, Hashim, for this wonderful introduction. Thank you very much for coming and not being on holiday already. Yes, I feel very honored to be here at Harvard School of Design. And it's always good to have a challenging audience, then you reflect your own work again. It's what I did when I was preparing this lecture. I'm a bit nervous because it's new for me to present some of the thoughts, and I would be happy if I get some nice discussion afterwards on these thoughts. So for me, architecture is not only an art, it's most of all a tool to improve lives. And for that, of course, it's necessary to put the human beings in the center of the work. And I guess most of us do, but I think there are quite some, you can do it in many different ways. Like the modular of Le Corbusier, it's, I think, a quite formal way to put the human beings in the center. It's like taking the human proportions and making it at the basic of all design aspects. But I'm referring more towards Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think you're all familiar with that. The biological and physiological needs, the very basis of the hierarchy, the safety needs, the belongingness, the love needs, the esteem needs, and self-actualization. And for me, I think that our architecture at the moment refers mostly to safety needs, which is, well, having a shelter, having a stable environment, having safe and healthy living conditions. And of course, the aesthetic aspects. Everyone wants to be or wants to live in a beautiful house one is proud of. But I think it's to really have, or to respond on all the needs of human beings, we really have to also consider other aspects in our architecture, like a healthy environment, air, water, fertile land. Whatever we build is going to end up somewhere in the air, in the ground, or in the water. And of course also, I think there's something wrong with the microphone. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. The social responsibility, whatever we build, we have a budget in our hands. We can kind of, it's our decision who is getting the profit of the project. So I think we have a quite big responsibility in that way. And of course, belongingness also refers to culture, to tradition. And something which is the top, the expression, the identity, the creativity is something we definitely have to include in our architecture as well. Not only our own, of the architects, but also of the user and the craftsman. So this is my version of Maslow's hierarchy, is eco-responsibility. It's function safety, of course. It's social responsibility, fair economics. It's aesthetics, and it's creative, productive involvement. We kind of end up more or less as consumers only, whatever, in our daily life. I think we hardly produce anything. So I think this is something major that we kind of have to bring in our architecture again, not to produce ready-made houses where the user is just the consumer, but I think it's also needed to give some space to the user to express his or her own identity. It was very good for me to come to Bangladesh, not as an architect first, but as just a curious girl. I was 19 years old. I spent there 1 year, and it was very necessary for me to get to know the needs of the people there. I lived mostly in one little remote village in Rudapur, which is about 10 hours to go from the capital. The traditional architecture there is just beautiful. You have mud houses, bamboo, straw. There's just nothing that harms your eyes when you cross the village. It's just absolutely beautiful. But there's also a bad sign of the coal. Yeah. Is it okay? Okay. So, but the level of technology there is quite basic. It's like you have these earth houses just placed on an earth island in the midst of the paddy fields. And when the rainy season is coming, especially then, of course, the humidity is going up in the walls, and the walls are soaking up the water. And then the rats are coming because they also don't want to get flooded, and they are going into the walls and making Swiss cheese out of it. And then when the rain comes and hits the walls, this is the scenario. And this is why the houses have a very bad, or the materials, the traditional materials, earth and bamboo, have a very bad image there. And I was wondering why, I mean, for so many years, so many centuries, people are living in earth and bamboo houses, why the techniques are not further developed. And I think development happens when you see the value of something. If you love something, then you put in your passion, your energy, your time and love to really bring it on a new level or on a better level. And that's the the problem there in Bangladesh, because they see every educated person, the middle class, everyone who's got a little bit of money in his hand, they are changing the materials. They are stopping to work in mud. They are going to buy the bricks. So of course, also the poor or the workers and the craftsmen, they think it's bad material. It's no use in putting in the time and the love to develop it further. And that's why I was trying with the project. Oh, yes, this is the current trend at the moment. Do I have a pointer? No. So this is the tradition on that side. And this is the modern version of it, said to be more durable than the tradition. But it's not only a shift in, well, it's a shift in identity. I mean, these buildings could be anywhere in the world, in South Africa or in whatever, in Venezuela. And it's also a shift in income sources. I mean, for these buildings, it's mainly human labor that, or people who are profiting from the houses. And whereas in these buildings, it's mainly the industry who's getting the profit. And of course, it has a major influence on the environment. So imagine at the moment, I think about 100 million people or Bangladeshi are living in earthen bamboo houses. If they're going to start to build in bricks, this is the scenario when you leave Dhaka city. It's just surrounded with a huge belt of brick fields. And you can imagine what kind of influence this has on the climate. And it's, of course, not only Bangladesh, it's India, it's China, it's many countries in the south, which are still now sustainable, but slowly turning in towards modern construction technologies. Well, of course, it's not the use in saying, well, please stay in your sustainable environment and stay whatever level of development you have. Of course, they need to be improved, and of course, they need a new level of development. But my question was, how is it possible to improve the level of development and by the same time keep the level of sustainability? So in my diploma at the university, I made a proposal for a public representative building. That was the Handmade-school, to show the qualities of earth and bamboo and to show that it's not about small and dark huts, but that you can really build big structures with it. And I also had another public building, which is just built two years back, and also some pilot projects in housing, in rural housing, just to show how they can really implement in their housing situations. So these were the drawings for my diploma. It's well, the drawing is not very clear in that projector, but it's a very basic section or basic layout. We have a mud, or a ground floor is built with load-bearing mud walls. The feeling, the atmosphere is very protective there, and yeah, kind of massive. And then you go up, and it's a very airy and light bamboo floor. And I was just trying to remember the spaces that I liked when I was a child, and that it was somewhere hiding on the desks, or somewhere hiding on the bushes, or making some tents or some caves. And this is what I just tried to do with the building there, just to bring in these kind of archaic elements that all kids around the world like. And of course, I was also trying to climb trees and to have some overview, and just so this play with the more protective atmosphere and this more overlooking and expressive atmosphere the idea came from. I didn't do the project alone. I had good partners. I had great craftsmen with me, and I had a great technical planner, Eike Roswag from Berlin, who did the school in partnership with me, the realization. And I had also a local NGO. It's very important that you're kind of locally rooted, and not just to come in as a foreigner, pop in and impose some ideas, and you will always fail when you have no local network behind you. So Deepshika and Paul Tiga were a great support. So whenever I start a project, I look at three major things. This is what kind of energy is locally available, what kind of materials are locally available, and what kind of information skills are locally available. And I think, because what I learned when I was a development learner or volunteer, there in Bangladesh, I learned that the most sustainable and most successful development approach is that you look what you have, what kind of resources you have, and bring out the best of it, and not trying to depend on external good, because you're just losing your independence and freedom. So I was just trying to do the same with architecture. So this is the energy source that we have. We have water buffaloes and cows to mix. We have mud and straw for the materials. We have human labor. And we have some knowledge, some craftsmanship there, which we try to improve a bit. So this is the site. Funnily, the cows were worse than as mixing machines because they were too intelligent. The buffaloes, they were kind of stupid, and they were mixing much better. So I'm not starting any gender discussions now, but it was like the cows were always trying to find the steps they made before, the round before, and the water buffaloes, they were just walking anyway. So the mix, the earth straw mix, technique is called COP, was just placed on top of a foundation. It's a very basic improvement, but it makes the major change in earthen structures. It's a simple rule. You need good boots and you need a good hut. That means a good foundation and a good roof to make the structure safe. So that's what we did. And then we just placed it by hand, the mix of straw and earth. And straw acts kind of as a kind of reinforcement in the earth walls, and this was also not used in that area. So it's very simply done, and then, put on the foundation, then dried for a couple of days, and then trimmed with a spade into accurate shape. So no framework or no sophisticated tools needed. And then you just put the next layer. We also had the users, the kids involved in the process, and it was very nice. They had just their usual classes in the morning in some old storerooms, and then they came all in the afternoon and helped us on the site, and they had really fun in doing that. And that's a nice thing if you build with earth and not with cement, for example, then you can really involve a lot of people in that. So it's always when you plan something from a distance, and then you have to expect some unforeseen things. So this was the case in the bamboo. We had tested it with a very nice bamboo from Colombia. It was tested also in the Technical University in Berlin. And then we came to the site, and it looked like that. Surprise, surprise. And then we had the problem that also the diameter was much too little than we thought. So it was like, the whole structural system didn't work anymore. So we had to do whatever was used to be done a long time ago. We did a one-by-one mock-up, and then we used the problem that we had. The curved bamboo we used as an opportunity or as an advantage, and we just made it a little bit height, and then we tested it with all the workers. It was very much needed because it's the only two-story building in that area. And it was very, the people were afraid really to go for 2 stories, and we had to test it in a quite safe height also, that the people are really knowing that it's gonna be, it's gonna be stable and they will not break down. So we tested it, and then you can see it's absolutely straight. So that's the lashing tactic, the traditional lashing tactic, and that shows a bit the approach that we have. We always look what kind of technology is already existing. So in South America or Latin America, you have, for example, these joints, these metallic joints, which are quite difficult to make. So, but this is the normal thing you find in literature about bamboo. But I thought it's not good to take something that the normal people wouldn't replicate. So we sticked on the lashing technique that we had, but we improved it in a simple way. Just instead of 2, we made 3 because of the span. We used a steel pole and a nylon lashing. Later on, we also tried it with coconut fiber lashings. So I'm not a fundamentalist in using only local materials. I'm using also other materials when it is absolutely needed, but always in a way that I can easily separate it and reuse it again. So there were thousands of lashings and, of course, lots of blisters. that's the way we made the ceiling. So it's just a spliced bamboo, and then on top or filled in with straw and mud mix again. So if you remember the curved bamboo, you can imagine how difficult it was to get the straight beams there. So we prefabricated the frames on the floor, on the ground, and then we just lifted it. We also didn't have any crane, so it's always like the ant strategy in Bangladesh. You don't know how to do it, and then you just call up many people to come together, and then you somehow lift it and manage it. So that's how it looked after 4 months, and then after another 2 months. We left the facade raw, which is quite rough for the local people. But it was necessary because there were rumors going on like, oh, these foreigners, they're bringing in some, medicine or chemicals or whatever, cement to make the walls strong. And it was just necessary to bring them in front of the wall, so touch it, look at it, and see what's inside. And there's no other materials than you have at home also. So it was very much needed to make it in that kind of rough surface. It was also needed to bring in the colors that was kind of like bringing the poesy into the building. That was really the moment the people really started really liking the building. So the kids also signed with the names on the doors. That was a very nice moment for them. They were really proud. It's like a chronicle. And I was in Bangladesh just two weeks back, and the new kids, the new classes were signing also with their names, and they were absolutely proud. It's tradition in the rural areas to sit on the floor. We kept this tradition. And through this boat hose, you come to the cave space. So it's like in that school, it's a little bit like Montessori philosophy. It's like a different pace of learning is respected. That means if kids are faster with their work and finished it faster than the others, they can take a book and they can just retreat there and have some reading or some small teamwork, or there are also doing a lot of meditations in the school. So this space is used for these kind of activities. There were no parametric systems or anything or morphing. It was nice, It was like it's just the bending capacity of the bamboo and the plasticity of the mud, and it was nice. I just showed the workers how to do it, and then I went. I just let them doing it without me, and they had so much fun in doing it. They knew this can't go wrong because the material is anyway doing a nice shape, and it's just nice to give them the freedom and the creativity to do them alone. And it was also interesting. I had a lecture. I heard a lecture of Patrick Schumacher in Shanghai, and that was at the Arche Prix, and he was presenting. I think it was a hotel room, and he explained how difficult it was to get the shapes, and how even more difficult it was to define or to find materials for that. And I was thinking, how lucky am I? I just need the mud and the bamboo, and it's coming automatically. Of course, it's not that perfect, but it doesn't matter because the kids still like it, and it's easy to repair. Just need water and time for that, and it's absolutely ecological and absolutely cheap. So I never felt anyhow limited in my creativity. I think, I was afraid before that when I'm working in a very poor country and having no resources, that I'm feeling a lot of limits, and I can't express the spaces that I want to express. But in fact, it's a release to concentrate on only two materials and to really try to understand the material and to really create the spaces out of the material. So as a student, I was used to create the spaces and then try to find a material for that. And that's just the other way around. I see the material and then I start playing with it. How can I shape the spaces? So that's the first floor. It's tradition in Bangladesh to have the saris on under the roof. And the structure itself, it's quite unusual for the place, but because of the use of the local materials, it kind of blends in the environment. That's the school garden. That didn't work out. I was hoping to have a vertical garden there with like cabbage and beans and whatever. But whenever plants were growing a bit, then the goats were coming. And every time I tried it 3 times and it didn't work out. So yeah, that's a very rare scenario that we have electricity there. So I had to plan the school really like that it works without any electricity, without any air conditioning, and only with natural lighting. That was the awards, the opening ceremony, and these were the handing over of the certificates for the workers. They were just day laborers when they came to work with us, and it's day laborers are having a very low social status in Bangladesh. I mean, carpenters are carpenters, bricklayers are bricklayers, but mud workers or bamboo workers are just day laborers, just not really the lowest of the social society there. So when we had this opening, we gave them a certificate stating them that they're mud workers and bamboo workers, and they had a new profession, and they had really a totally different feeling, and they were absolutely proud. Most of them never went to school, so it was the first certificate they got in their life. And this certificate is now proudly hanging in the huts between Radha and Krishna and all the Bollywood stars. But I came back to Bangladesh quite some times, and then I saw that the original aim that they're improving their own housing conditions did fail somehow. It was the scale of the school, and the purpose or the use was too different to their homes. They couldn't kind of link it with their own housing conditions. So I knew I have to do some kind of housing projects as well. This is the typical housing situation. This is Hemonto with his wife, and he was living there with his 2 sons, with his mother and 3 cows and 5 goats in this little room with the door as the only window. And yes, that's a very typical situation. The houses in Bangladesh for the farmers, they are just used for storing things and for sleeping, because they are all day outside, so they don't need a home in that way. But the kids are going now to school, and they need to do some homework, and they want to read. And when the level of education is rising, then automatically also the level of privacy is rising. And when in Bangladesh it's so densely populated that you're never alone. That means outside you really have no space to concentrate. So architecture has to react on that, and usually it goes the way that they change the material instead of changing the architectural language. And this is what we're trying to promote, that don't change the material, change the architecture. For this project, students from Dhaka, from Prague University joined me, and also students from Austria, from BASEhabitat. And they were with me for 3 months. They were doing the designs, they were discussing with the clients, and also building. And I think this is very important. I mean, we do so easily with a few mouse clicks a 12-story building, but we have no physical relation to energy anymore. Once we haven't built a wall with our own hands, we cannot, we don't know how much energy is really in a building or in a wall. And I think this is something that is also needed, that you somehow have a feeling for energy. I think then you work with it more respectfully. For the housing, we kept the traditional typology. We did some long studies before, and we saw that it really works out perfectly. We just changed the main house for that. That were the drawings of the students. And the major change was really to go from single stories to 2 stories. It is strange that although land is the most precious resource in Bangladesh because of the overpopulation, the main expansion is horizontal-wise, and they just really mostly living in single-story structures. And it's kind of, I mean, then the thing is that they don't have any land to cultivate the food they need for the family, so they end up going to the cities because they don't have any other income sources. So, and in the cities, especially in Dhaka, it's kind of too much pressure and it's too much chaos. It just can't take the load of so many people. And also they're completely losing their self-sustaining conditions. And they're losing, they're getting kind of, they're getting depending. So the major change of this project was really to promote the two-story structures, because they easily can do it with their own energy, with their own materials. Whereas when they're in towns, of course, you can do multi-story buildings, but then again, you have a lot of input on energy and resources again. We also tried to improve the comfort in the buildings with coconut fiber insulations, and also with passive solar heating. We did the simulations before. And I was very happy with the students that they didn't try to make any loud or special structures, but kind of very humble, because it's very important when you want to do or to motivate for development, not to be to build the social injustice kind of, or some friction, that you build something that you say, well, I'm doing something you can never achieve, but it should be the other way around. It should be kind of a teaser. It should be, of course, a different level of development, but it should be within the reach of the neighbors, for example, not in order not to create any social friction. And you can just see that it's nicely blending in with the homestead of the other neighbors. But at the same time, I built a building that also hosts the middle class, like teachers, because it was, I thought, when we again only make a housing project for the low-income families, like the farmers, then again it would be only a material for the poor, and that stigmata wouldn't change. So we did a school for electrical training, which hosts 2 residences for the teachers. And it is also a new interpretation of the Bangladeshi homestead with the courtyard. It's just, I mean, it's no use to make any living rooms when you have within this climate. You can really have, and they also like to be outside, so it's more useful to make a large veranda rather than making a large indoor space. These were the only drawings for the site. So it was really, that's luxury when I was there every day, so it's kind of more like sculpturing process. So for example, we cut off, we forgot one window, it was then changed, and we just cut it in afterwards. So this is the nice thing if you work with these materials, that you just can really adjust it to the needs and to the process, and then it just happens that something goes wrong, but actually it looks better than you thought, and then you just incorporate it in the process, and it was a very nice dynamic on the site, and I really loved it not to be fixed on drawings and inches, and just can go with the flow and the intuition in a way. That was the team with Hasibu Kovir from the University and Stefan Neumann as an engineer, and a local constructor, Monto, who was a great help too. So this is the west elevation. We have 2 classrooms. I'm really sorry, but the pointer, I think, is not working. Oh no, I switched it off. Oh, sorry. Oh, I think I have to go through all slides again. This was also what I had to learn. I had to, my personal impatience, that is really something when you work in that culture and that climate, there's always something coming up that you don't expect. And especially when the rain was coming, I was like angry like anything with the weather. And then they said, yeah, Anna, you can't climb up the clouds and you can't change the climate. Sit down, drink a tea, and relax. So the difference of the middle class and the low income houses was not primarily the money. It was the input on craftsmanship and of time and love and design that you put in the building. And I think this is the way fair architecture development happens, that you just give a teaser for the craftsmen to really improve the skills, and that's how development works, and not just like building something so special that nobody can kind of imitate it. And I'm happy that people are coming and doing drawings of the design of and like craftsmen coming and trying to find some other solutions, and really it's kind of a pushing for more development. It's still the same material, it's still bamboo, but in a more fine way, elaborated way. It's the same with the mud, with the plasterings. We had very fine finishes this time, and the people really loved it. It is also sometimes very archaic. This is the water tower that was very difficult to convince the people or the client that we bring in water sanitary units in earth houses. This is the veranda. And this is the space that the people really liked. That is something that they haven't seen before. It's like being outside, but still being private. And this is somehow respecting the local tradition a lot, and it's still improving the situation. It's more like a poem of the nature. You can feel it from the patterns of the shadow. You can feel it through the ornaments, but still you're kind of private. And it's just used in the same way like the courtyards. These are the classrooms. We also improved it comfort-wise or thermal-wise in comparison to the school before. We also did the furniture. This was because when I was living there in Bangladesh, I was often invited in the family houses, and they had these Baroque-ish, stylish wooden couches, which they never use when you're then, you enter, then you have to look at it, and then they bring you to the bed, and then all people, 6, 7, 8 people are sitting on one big bed, and you're having your lunch there, and it's just, somehow they're wasting a lot of money for furniture they don't really need. So we also made a large bed, which is kind of in an alcove with cross ventilation, so that they can really use. This is how they put it themselves then. Yeah, the sanitary units. And about sustainability, I think it's, I'm a bit critical with the buildings that waste a lot of resources, and then on top they put a little bit of solar panels or photovoltaic, and then they call it a green building. I think it's a very shallow way of thinking sustainability. I think it's really needed to reduce the embodied energy as much as possible, and there are really natural resources that can do or build fantastic buildings, and it's no need to bring in so much steel and so much cement. And I think this is something we have to learn from the South, really to be more respectful with the resources that we have. But of course, not to ignore technology and high tech. It's absolutely necessary to do this, but in a good balance, not that we are getting depending on technology, but that it makes us self-sufficient. I think this should be the aim. So the building is 100% powered by solar. It's not even connected to the grid. It has its own septic tank, has its own well. And that was for me, the happiest moment. I was a little bit afraid of the local architects in Bangladesh, what they would say when foreigners coming and doing some, working with the traditional materials again. But they liked it a lot. They really liked it. And they came at the Institute of Architects in Bangladesh, they came, and also the government, and they said they would like to learn modern technologies in earthen structures, because they saw, I mean, usually they look towards the north. What kind of, I mean, they're having, at the universities, you see models of Frank Lloyd Wright, you see Zaha Hadid, you see Craig Lynn, you see Eisenman. But, well, you hardly see something, some kind of testings or anything with the local materials. And they can never be, I mean, if you're imitating someone and if you're not authentic, you can never be top. And this is what they kind of understood. And they also saw this is a way to be more sustainable than us, and also to be in the pole position in the top league, and not only just imitating. And we announced the workshop 3 weeks before we had it, and we were a bit afraid that not many would come, because it was said that we will work hands-on, and it's absolutely not usual that an architect in Bangladesh is working hands-on. It's absolutely no-go usually. And even the organizers were a bit afraid to say, oh, let's do more theoretical lessons. I said, no, I mean, you cannot learn it just by theory. You have really, with this material, you really have to have some hands-on experience. And then, well, the first evening, we had already 50 applications, and in the end, it was 75. We wanted to have 25 in the beginning. So it was really a huge response from the local architects. And they were building then. It was... Okay, it's not shown here, but it was very nice for me to see that they're really accepting it. And there are also some projects coming up already, also in a very high-end level, like a 5-star eco-resort now from local architects, and I'm very curious how they look like. And I'm also happy that I'm not working at the moment in Bangladesh, so things can come up. So again, to the hierarchy of needs, I really think that eco-responsibility is something that we have to respect. And I mean, we are always afraid that, many young architects are afraid that they're not getting jobs. I don't know if Harvard students are thinking the same way, because of course you have a better recommendation. But I think a lot of architects are afraid that they have no jobs or just any jobs. When I think there is a lot to do in the world. I mean, there's just plenty of work. And we just have to react on the present needs, and eco-responsibility is definitely something that we cannot ignore. Of course, function and safety, and working with the local climate. This is something which we also have. I'm still wondering when I'm in the US about the windows that you have and the small. I mean the walls so thin, like really, and then you have all this air conditioning, and it's so easy to build houses without any air conditioning, with a comfortable climate inside, with just with passive solar, with passive functions and actions, with the cross ventilation, with solar. So I really wonder why it's not more in the everyday architecture. That I mean, it's also a question of comfort. I mean, if you don't work with the climate. Welfare economics, we have the recession. This is also a challenge, a real challenge that we have to face. And it's clear that when we invest in technologies and in materials that support the big industry, of course, then kind of the middle class and also the lower ones, I mean, the social injustice will rise. And we also forget about, we have 7 billion of people living on this planet, and they need work. I mean, if they have no work, then there's aggression, then terrorism is rising, the danger of terrorism. So I think we have also the responsibility to provide jobs for them, and not just any jobs. We have to find good jobs for them, because everybody wants to do something meaningful. And I think this is also a responsibility when we design something, that we think of the technology and who is doing it, and does it create jobs, or is it just for the industry? I mean, for the big industry that doesn't have the local market. Aesthetics is, of course, important. This is very difficult to discuss with NGOs sometimes, or with like the big organizations, because they think this is something that is luxury, but I think it's definitely a human need or an urge to live in a beautiful house. And yeah, that's the thing where we are all afraid of the users or the activities or creativity of the users. We are trying to make the pictures of the architecture before the users are coming. And we're constantly afraid that they're kind of destroying the image of architecture we have in our mind. So I think this is something we really have to. I mean, it's a joy to work with, to let space with for the users and also the craftsmen. And I heard an interview of Karajan, the famous conductor, when he was working with the Philharmonics Symphony Orchestra of Vienna. He had a very clear idea of what he wanted. I mean, he knew it exactly, and he was quite strict, but he knew it also very well when he could leave the musicians go with the flow, because, I mean, he had great musicians, so it was kind of a dialogue with them. So, and in the end, he created a wonderful piece of music with his, and I think this is also the way I'm trying to do architecture. I won't let the kids design the school because, I mean, they are not the architects. I'm the architect. But and also with the craftsmen. But being in a dialogue and knowing exactly when you can leave the space for them for their own creativity, I think this is something very important, and that also makes the process very joyful. Yeah, an ecological, responsible, fair, creative, communicative architect is a needed architect and is a happy architect. And I can say I'm a happy architect, and I hope you are too. Thank you very much. So?
Would you be willing to take questions?
Yeah, sure.
Anna is happy to take any questions.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the materials that you use. So you're talking about the mud and the bamboo and the stigma that has in the communities. How did you convince your clients, the stakeholders, for those first two buildings to use those materials? Because I know it's a big issue.
Yeah, it was not easy because, I mean, schools and education is a prestige, a matter of prestige there. And they, of course, wanted to have a building they can be proud of. But it was like, well, the way the building looked like in the drawings and the models, that was convincing for them. That means that was something special. So it was more the architecture. And it was also, I mean, they have a very strong cultural pride. And then in the end they were saying, oh, at Ahmad-Amati, this is our earth. This is, very pathetic then in that way. So it's same with the other clients. So it was like, you can get them with the cultural pride. And I mean, this is something they very strongly have. It's just, I mean, it's just so, just a mindset that bricks are better and concrete, but if you can change it. I mean, it's possible, but of course it needs a little bit. I had the good luck that they kind of trusted in me because they knew me for a long time, and it was a friendship, and that was a bonus that I had. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this wonderful work. I wanted to ask, if you were asked to design a 7-story skyscraper, would you do it?
They are earth houses existing in 7 stories.
70.
I mean,
70.
Oh, no.
No?
No way.
What is sort of your limit? 6 stories, 7 stories, 8, 4?
I would need to do some tests, but I mean, yes.
No, not necessarily in mud, just, in general.
Oh, for me, I like smallish. For me, small is beautiful, I mean,
Well,
all the focus is on cities, and I'm having more my focus on the rural areas, because I mean, I know the World Bank is promoting that the people are living in cities, but I mean, it works for a city like New York when you have these public transportation systems, but in a city like Bangladesh and Dhaka, that is chaos all over, and it doesn't work. So I think.
So do you think you're a happier architect because you found your scale?
Well, I'm having a bigger scale now in the Moroccan project, and I would also like to do something in urban space, but I think the limit of the scale is when the user have no space for own creativity anymore, or for when the user is bound to be a consumer only. And I haven't tested what is the limit of the scale, but I think this is something very important, that you're not just ending up, and sitting and I think a city has to have space for people being creative and being productive, and I think otherwise it's getting unhealthy in a way.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just following up on that first question regarding the stigma versus prestige of materials, do you think that the fact that they thought initially brick is better, and then all these brick kilns you showed us, may have something to do with Khan in Dhaka? How, again, in the case of an important architect coming and taking a material and blending it.
People, architects are still, he's the godfather. It's a really beautiful piece of architecture, it's not out. And it has to do something with that, yeah.
And that's an issue throughout all of Southeast Asia and China as well. So nobody uses bamboo in Vietnam, Thailand, because it's a sensitive issue.
But the fact that Khan
Yeah.
used brick as a way of, just like you are doing, using local labor, and again, brick using local earth. So
yeah, it had a great influence. Really big one. But with the assembly hall, it's like it's difficult to maintain it. They're proud of it, but they are really kind of, because this is difficult to maintain it. Whereas, of course, the mud houses, you also have to maintain it, but you can take mud and water, and it's just easy to maintain it in a way. And yeah, but it has a lot of influence, and it's like people in those, or architects in those countries, they look that much to the north, what is going on here, and I think this is something we also have to be careful that whatever we are promoting, this is having an influence, and we have to be careful to say this is not the only solution that we have, and this is a kind of also, also the lead regulations, I'm critical about it, because it's like also promoting again a exclusive sustainability that only 1/3 of the world's population can afford again, and I wonder if exclusive sustainability is really sustainable, and this is, I think there's still a lot to learn.
May I ask that what was the cost of your buildings, especially comparing to the local, method of building?
That's the question that always comes. The question that I'm asking myself is, who's getting the profit? I think that's the main question, because there has to be economic force in the villages. I try to minimize the material costs as much as possible, and earth is available for free usually, and bamboo you get from the local farmers. So it is low cost. The problem is we made the pilot project, we made the foundation 9 times with the students, and it's just not the real. I think it's about 3,000 maybe for the double-story house, and but I think the primarily question is really to think who is getting the profit, and it's kind of also, I'm not so happy with all these low-cost. If you build low-cost houses, the cheapest version maybe is having these 4 reinforced concrete columns and then these CI sheet walls around it. But then again, who's getting the profit? It is sponsored money from any outside markets that they're giving under the label of development. They're giving the budget for this kind of projects for the government, and then they're distributing the materials, and then again the money goes back to the donors. So,
right, but you want the local people to imitate your method of design. If your building is twice or 3 times more than the local cost, how can they imitate
that was
your design?
It's not 3 times. One thing is, a good house is something that totally poor people cannot also build a good house. Of course, there is some investment like the foundation that is costly, and without a good foundation, you cannot make a good house nowhere in the world. But it's a very simple brick foundation, so this is something that people have to afford. But I think it is like, I was thinking I have to find the perfect solution, the perfect technology to really cut down the costs and whatever. But meanwhile, I think my responsibility is to raise the dream again for the people to live in these houses, and that they really want it, because whatever they want, they find the way to go there. They're incredibly creative and intelligent to find the ways. And you find TVs in the slums, and they all smoke, and it's something they can afford if they want it. And I think the brick foundation is something. I mean, if this is what I'm trying to do with my work, you really to show them, what you have, your resources is something beautiful, and you can make a beautiful piece of architecture, and you just find your way, because you have more experience than me in working in that material. So I don't have to say exactly what they have to do, but I just have to promote that they believe in their own values and their own resources that they have, and the culture that they have. This is what I'm trying to do with the work.
Thank you for showing these very charming buildings. But unfortunately, when I think of Bangladesh, I think of flooding. Is that something that you considered when designing, or?
No, this area is not flooded, but there is another project now in Dhaka that was done with my bamboo workers. This is kind of a house, that's bamboo house that is rising with the flood. So I cannot solve every problem, but I mean, it's going on. Also some work with bamboo. I would say earth can be okay with flood if it's like not a floating water, but if it's wet, and then it can dry out quite quickly again. But the problem is when it's floating, and it is something that I'm also interested in, because I was just lately in Pakistan, and there is no way for all those homeless people to build in concrete or bricks. So they have to experiment with those materials. And so far, there is no, for what I can see, no real solution for that. So I would be interested in doing research how to do it, how to make it really stable. But there's still a lot to do. That's also the problem, because I mean, it's still the most important building material I think almost the half or 1/3 of the world's population is living in Earth, but there's hardly any research, and there's no universities is teaching anything about the earthen structure. So this is also a lack, and there's still a huge field of possibilities open.
Thank you so much. I thought it was an incredibly thoughtful and inspiring presentation. I'm from Pakistan, and I can kind of already begin to see sort of, it's speculative because it's a prototypical project. And I'm wondering if you're planning to publish anything, maybe, I don't know what form that would take, but it would be, because a lot of architecture is disseminated now through images or drawings. So do you have any plans to do that?
Yes, but I'm having a little daughter that is always disturbing my plans. So it will be. It will be.
Thank you for sharing your very inspiring work. My question is about your rendering style and the trade-offs involved in that. One of the things you've talked about is communication. And on the one hand, I love seeing at the Museum of Modern Art. I just love seeing your original work, renderings. But we do have technology now that can show communities exactly what the end product's going to look like. And with your veranda, for example, I can understand that they said, oh, this is great, but did they know ahead of time what that would be like? On the other hand, I see your rendering style as an invitation for dialogue and saying this isn't finished. So I'd just like to ask you about your rendering technique.
It's an interesting question. I think this has to do also with, I mean, this is, I'm not a computer freak, so so I cannot do something that is not authentic. This is not my element, and well, of course, for the school, I had to do the presentations. For the university, I had to choose something. But it was also that I felt that earth is kind of not a perfect material in, you know, having a straight line. So I like to have it more kind of emotional, like a drawing. So that was the way I chose it. And for the other one, you're right. It just was not finished. It was, I mean, it happened on the site, and we were constantly, I mean, it was like a sculpturing process. So it was, the drawings were not important, kind of. And the workers, I mean, nobody could read any scale measurements. So it was absolutely not necessary to do any drawings. So we would just, you know, I was there and showing them where to cut the window. And so that was not a necessary thing. But of course, I mean, it's of course possible to do also these things in really nice 3D models. But I think I mean, you need to be really good in that it looks kind of, I mean, touching, or not just like a, and I'm not good in it, and it's just not my.
Thank you so much for that. I had a very quick question. If the people of those villages, if they had limitless money, do you think they would still they would not trade this school building for another design of the school building, for example, one of concrete or steel with a steel structure, more typical buildings? If yes, do you think they would trade it because of other qualities like imageability, as we discussed before, of qualities of permanence, of these things and facilities? And if no, then do you think that you are attracting wealthier clients for these kind of designs?
Yes, there are clients coming and asking already, and it's like the mayor of the next village, he's angry that he also wants to have his own house built now. And so it's like, and the craftsmen are now hired in other places to do things, and they're very proud because they're saying that we are the only one. But it's now, but still, I mean, development takes time, and this is a period of 5 years now. So this takes time. I'm looking very forward that one Bangladeshi architect, Marina Tabasoon, and she is doing now this resort, and I think this will attract a lot of clients. You know, I think the middle class is very important for really development. Once you got the middle class involved, then the poor, or I mean the low income families, they will always follow, because I mean they believe what the middle class is doing. So I'm very curious what is happening when this resort is there and people are going there, and then, because I mean they all have emotional links to this material. Their grandfather lived there, or even their parents. So it's something they know, and they're kind of really cultural aware of these things. So I think this will power again the development. And well, it was like in Europe, in Austria, there were the timber structures. They were absolutely out of fashion. I mean, nobody wanted to see or to live in a building built with timber. And in West Austria, a really handful of architects, they started building timber houses again, like 25 years back. And they did it in a very high aesthetic level. And it took a while, but now you see lots and lots of timber structures there. And everybody builds. I mean, lower income, middle class, high end. So it's everything. Public buildings, schools, lots of buildings are now in these structures. And it was literally just a handful of people starting that. So I think it needs kind of, the beginning is slow, but I think then it will come. At least I'm confident. I'm having the dream. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. You talked a lot about beauty, so I'm wondering what makes your buildings beautiful, and when could a beautiful earthen architecture become ugly?
Second question is difficult. I think what first one is easier. For me, a beautiful building is a building that is in harmony not only with the urban context or the context there, not only with the functions and the material use, but also with the environment and the society. I think this is kind of a harmony that you can feel and that is also reflected. I mean, this is something. Yeah, harmony. You feel as beauty, I think. And for me, sustainability is a synonym of beauty if you have all these levels. And what makes an earth building ugly is if you don't build within the character of or the language of the material. I've seen quite some projects, for example, in India, where they tried to make faked brick houses in a way. So, and this is something I can't understand. I mean, why should people buy a fake Mercedes if they can have a Mercedes with a bit more money? They would always choose the real one and not the faked one. So I think this makes the earth building ugly if you don't build with the language of the material and if you're kind of imitating other things. But I think if you're really going in the material and respecting all the levels of sustainability, I think it's good. But of course, yes, you need you need to be a good designer also. I mean, but I think this is not what is lacking for the most architects. I think you study something because you feel that you have a talent for it. But I think the other parts of the hierarchy are sometimes missing. Thank you. Thank you, Hashim.